Here in the Philippines, we know that scam centers operate, but we also know that law enforcement and the government here takes them very seriously. There are geopolitical black holes that we all know of, where law enforcement has no appetite to actually combat this.
Turn it over to my colleague, Rob Abrams, from our law enforcement team. He's going to specifically talk about some of the work that we do in collaboration with Philippines law enforcement and the very close relationship that we have with them. Well, and then I'll continue. Thanks a lot, Rob.
Thank you, Rafi. So I want to talk a little bit in a bit more depth, but not with a level of granularity that would afford our adversaries any sort of unnecessary insight into the obstacles that we put up. But I want to talk in a little bit more depth about the network disruptions that we do. They're very strategic in in nature. They're not merely about scale and taking down 10,000 accounts at one time. They're about removing a false web of bona fides that these criminals go to great lengths to create so that they can contact people unwittingly by seemingly being friends of friends or having other sorts of connections. A lot of the work we do, especially here in the Philippines, is informed by the signal sharing and by the data requests we get from agencies like NBI, from the Office of Cybercrime, from CICC, from the Anti-Cybercrime Group at the PNP, and others. So a lot of the work that we've been able to do, I say this under oath, and I say this with a lot of passion. The Philippines has been seriously global leaders when it comes to helping us fight forced criminality and these scam centers, formerly known as POGOs, if you like, that operate here in the Philippines, target not only Filipinos, but are engaged in human trafficking, forced criminality, and are a large part of the scam and increasingly misinformation ecosystem that, again, have a big role here. I think there's one advantage that I'd like to point out, and I know it sounds perhaps a bit counterintuitive. Here in the Philippines, we know that scam centers operate, but we also know that law enforcement and the government here takes them very seriously. There are geopolitical black holes that we all know of, where law enforcement has no appetite to actually combat this. But because we have such a good relationship with PNP Office, Anti-Cyber ACG, with the NBI, with various task forces, we are able to ingest signal regularly. I can say again, under oath, there's probably not a day that goes by where I'm not in contact with a member of Philippines law enforcement. So with that, and I'm quite certain I'll receive some follow-up questions and as we go forward. With that, I'll turn back over to Rafi. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thanks, Rob. And it was just worth noting that Rob himself is a former member of the FBI, and so takes his law enforcement work very seriously.
Just correction for the record, sir.
Sorry.
Homeland Security.
Homeland Security Department. Forgive me. So I would just also note that when we're talking about some of these disruptions, what we've seen also recently, and Rob alluded to this, is the rise of scam centers, right? And we've worked on this very, very closely over the past couple of years, both internally with Meta and also with our partners in law enforcement, with the PNP and other members of the Philippines law enforcement that Rob mentioned. It's really worth noting that I think it's kind of clear at this point that what we see are these transnational criminal syndicates that are operating in a couple different countries around Southeast Asia and indeed globally. And they engage in forced criminality, human trafficking, and then, of course, the real horrible element of this is that not only are people forcibly trafficked to these locations, but then they're forced to engage in further crime and scams against other people. And so we've worked extremely hard to take down these networks on our platform to the point where by the end of 2024, we had removed and deleted over 2 million accounts that came from these organized criminal scam centers in Myanmar, Laos, Cambodia, the UAE, and indeed a few here in the Philippines as well. Thanks very much to our collaboration with Philippines law enforcement.
I'd also like to just add for the record, the Filipino law enforcement community, as well as the BICAM in general, were among the first globally to flag this as a national security threat. So that has really sort of stepped up the tempo of our work and the investments we're doing around this work. So I just want to publicly acknowledge the law enforcement agencies, the military agencies, the regulatory agencies, and indeed members of the BICAM, who have been among the world leaders in flagging this not only as an economic threat to individual Filipinos, but as a national security threat here in the Philippines and globally. Of course, I don't want to get too granular on that, but the law enforcement agencies, and I'm sure your good self, Mr. Chair, are aware of exactly what I'm speaking of. If there are further, more granular conversations that you'd like to have around that, Mr. Chair, I, of course, would be honored to do that in executive session. And we have a great relationship with your law enforcement agencies and CICC. We held a conference in November in Bangkok, largely closed door and held under Chatham House rules. Filipino law enforcement were among sort of the flagship entities that were there. NBI spoke, PNP spoke, the PNP attaché in Bangkok spoke. He's been a fantastic advocate and source of trend sharing. So I just want to express gratitude for helping shape the narrative on how serious of a threat this is to the global infrastructure. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
For the political context side, but I have a few questions directly about this. During the question and answer with some of the members, we've seen that you have taken already you have noted and you have done some actions to ensure that there is moderation with the content, especially politically. Are you hiring Filipino moderators? Do you hire Filipino moderators, or like your previous statements, you have partnered with the IFCM?
Mr. Chairman, if I may. First of all, Congressman, thank you so much. We're really happy with the partnership we have with the PLCN and thrilled for the benefits it's providing to the Filipino people in terms of connectivity. And we only hope to do more.
Yeah,
and so we really hope that we can continue that type of partnership to bring these types of services and digital connectivity to Philippines, which obviously in the 21st century would be a huge boost. Thank you very much for the question. I think that I would, let me break this down into two different parts, right? First of all, absolutely yes. We very much have moderators that are from Philippines, that are native language speakers, and they're looking at content in the Philippines every single day. So absolutely yes, we do have those. I just want to make a distinction between moderators that look at potential violations of community standards versus third-party fact checkers. They're not the same thing. The moderators that we have are really looking at potential violations of our community standards. The third-party fact checkers are looking to determine if pieces of content are misinformation, right? But to be clear, those are also local, right? We work with 3 third-party fact checkers in Philippines, Verifiles, Rappler, and AFP. And again, all of them, of course, are local and have the local context, local native language capabilities. So absolutely, very much yes. We have the capabilities to both moderate content against our community standards and work with third-party fact checkers on misinformation in Philippines.
Mr. Chair, can I add, do you think they have the capacity for real-time review, or is it a taller task than it is?
Mr. Chairman, if I may. Congressman, again, I would like to break these because they're two different things, really. And I think we do have to make sure we're being distinct about how we talk about our general content moderation versus the misinformation. So starting with our content moderation and our community standards moderation, what we do is we prioritize the most severe harms first. It is not necessarily a first in, first out content moderation system. What we do is we prioritize the most harmful pieces of content first. So, for example, if we see that there are reports of child exploitative imagery, that's going to jump all the way to the top of the queue, right? if we see reports of terrorism content, incitement to violence, right, those types of things, those are going to jump ahead because of their potential to cause harm, right? And then that's the type of process we use so that we ensure that we are acting in a timely fashion against the most severe harmful content. Now, when it comes to misinformation, again, different, right? What we can do is we can ourselves send content for the fact checkers to check, or the fact checkers can do it themselves. They have the ability not to wait for us and to actually check content on their own. And what we see in the Philippines is they are very robust. I think we have some of the most robust fact checkers in the world active in the Philippines, and very active in terms of many of the political and types of content trends that we're seeing on our platforms today in Philippines.
So Mr. Chair, you're saying that you are prioritizing real-world harm, something that would really harm a specific place, a community, or even other countries, same country you're in. Is that how I understand it, sir?
Mr. Chairman, if I may. Yes, I mean, there's some nuance here, but in a basic sense, yes, right? I mean, certainly if there's content out there that can lead to real-world, offline, physical harm, then yes, that's going to, generally speaking, jump to the top of the queue. Yes.
So if I'm reading your presentation correctly, may I ask what type of accountability does Meta have in the Philippines when these things go south, or even if we tend to go to something a lot worse than regular trolling, regular misinformation? I would like to be clarified on that, sir.
So, Mr. Chairman, if I may. So, just to emphasize again, I want to be really clear. These systems are operating in parallel. Our ability to remove content that has the potential to cause offline harm has no impact on our ability to work with third-party fact checkers on misinformation. Those are operating in parallel, right? So I think, is that the answer to your question, or are you asking something different?
Yeah, it is actually, but I would like a sense of something more accountable coming from the company's sense towards a local like the Philippines.
Mr. Chairman, if I may. Yeah, Congressman, I think that, first of all, we're sitting here today, which I'm glad to be doing. I think it's very important that Meta, as a company with such ubiquitous and important services, answer your questions on these really important issues, especially in the lead up to an election. I'd like to point out that maybe we didn't actually show that slide now that I think about it, but we put a slide on our presentation that showed the award that we received from Comelec after the last election for the work we did to protect the integrity of the election. And so, and we intend, and we are in the process of doing that same work now with the midterm elections that are around the corner. And I would also just emphasize again that there are 11 different reporting channels that various agencies of the government and law enforcement have to come to Meta for accountability, right? And on top of all that, we also publish our transparency report every 6 months, where we demonstrate in a very transparent and open manner the content that we've removed based on violations of our community standards, the content that we have restricted due to local law, data requests that we have acted on based on law enforcement, and a number of other metrics that really show kind of how Meta is approaching our responsibilities in the Philippines, and I believe my colleague Rob would also like to add to that.
Mr. Chair, with your indulgence, may I add to the response? A very important question when you're talking about accountability. So I just want to speak briefly about real-world harm. When there is potential, and there's been a crime committed, and there's potential for real-world harm, law enforcement agencies in this room know how to lawfully request data from us. So we've helped mitigate innumerable threats here in the Philippines, from terrorist threats to kidnapping threats to child exploitation threats. We proactively escalate suicidal users. So when it comes to accountability, I think from the perspective of the law enforcement outreach team, we want to make sure that the Filipino law enforcement agencies present can probably speak to this as well, but we have a very robust data disclosure policy that's in line with our terms of service, American law, and Filipino law. And it's used each and every day by Filipino law enforcement so that they can go after the actual bad actors that are operating off-platform and coordinating off-platform harm. Thank you, sir.
May ipapakita akong video. Paki-plus po yung video na sinubmit ni Pebbles bilang Annex B ng kanyang affidavit. COMSEC. Ito po ba yung video na pinag-uusapan po natin na Pebbles?
Yes po, Mr. Chair.
At yan din ang video na pinadala sa iyo ni Maharlika noong July 22?
Yes po, Mr. Chair.
Ito rin po ba ang tinaguriang pulburon video?
Yes po, Mr. Chair.
Pwede po bang ipaliwanag nyo sa akin? Ano po bang sinasabi o nakikita dito sa video na ito?
Naggumagamit po ang presidente ng droga.
Okay.